talked about enhance, perturb, attract, excite in relation to creativity. And that's the last slide that we used. We're now moving on. We're going to be developing this theory, enhance, perturb, attract, excite, a theory of change, transformational change, referring back to Tuckman, who we talked about in an earlier section, which was form, storm, norm, perform, enhance, perturb, attract, excite. You can see the way they fit together now. Basically, then the basic process of change, enhance, perturb, attract, excite, the phase cycle, the 4 phase cycles, as we've talked about in parts 1, 2, and 3. That's a reminder. We're going to go one step deeper now. We're going to talk about the difference between evolution and revolution in change, and we're going to fit that into the model, and then that's as far as we're going to go. But we ask you to bear with us. We're going to go now. We're going to talk about evolution and revolution. So these are 2 strategies of change. Evolution is not well understood in management. Revolution is well understood in management. Management basically is all about revolutionary change, which is change that's driven. So what can we say? What's the difference between evolution and revolution? Well, revolution is about a goal, having a goal. Where will you be in 5 years from now, young man? That typical interview question, which some of you might find totally ridiculous these days with the rate of change in your particular environment. It's very much an obsolete question of the 20th century, some people would argue. So revolution is goal-orientated, so we're going to go through the difference between these 2, and then we're going to go a bit deeper into it. What else about revolution? Revolution is man-made. It's a man-made system according to a plan. It assumes that you can predict the future, or if you get all the information together, then you can make a pretty good kind of guess about the future. It's predictive. It's about designing a system, designing the future, planning the future, measuring progress. It's all about measurement, so it's all very linear. And it's basically about leaders setting the vision, and about managing, manos, the hands, the guy or the girl who's controlling the hands. People in that system are not paid to think. Only the people at the top are paid to think. They give you the vision and the direction, and you're expected to buy it and buy into it. Very much a 20th century kind of concept of management. But now if we look at evolution, evolution's got a totally different set of dynamics, and it's a different strategy altogether. If you look at natural systems, evolution essentially, where revolution drives towards a goal, evolution actually appears to avoid limits. You know, in nature you run away from things that are going to kill you. And it's all about avoidance. So revolution is about having a goal. That's a very control orientated. You're the boss, you're in control of that. Evolution is, I've got no control over this environment. I'm just going to avoid everything I don't want. You know, people at Intel hate failure. They haven't got goals. They just hate failure. If you read Andy Grove's biography from Intel, that's what they say. They weren't driving towards a goal. They were just avoiding failing. So an evolutionary system then avoids limits. We'll talk more about that. It seems to anyway, even though it's not thinking. Sorry, Joe. Yeah.
I want to make an interesting observation on evolution from the French historian Jacques Attali. And he showed that there seems to be an instinctual evolutionary drive in humans to always go for more freedom. And this happens over thousands and 10,000s of years. So for example, why did we create machines? Well, because we want to have the freedom to not have to do the dishes anymore in the morning. We can choose to do the dishes if we want to, but we can also pop them in a machine and let the machine do that for us. It's also a reason why we have moved away from religions telling us what to think and states telling us if we don't accept that religion, we'll get killed. we want to be able to make up our own minds of that. And it's also a reason why we as humans have moved more and more to political forms of democracy. In general, we don't want anybody else to tell us how to think and how we should behave. We want to figure out for ourselves what the smartest way of thinking is. Now, some of you viewing could say, yes, but what about tendencies of dictatorship in this world, or of fundamentalism in all sorts of ways? Well, historically, there have been movements back, but historically that has never ever kept the evolutionary drive to more freedom to a halt. So that one is continuing, and I think that's nice to hear, that we're avoiding limits as a species. It's our natural way.
It's true. I'm also a very good dishwasher, by the way. Yeah, so avoiding limits. We'll talk more about that. How does nature then do that? Okay, trees aren't thinking, okay, but they seem to avoid other trees. They seem to avoid brick walls. How do they do that? Well, they do that by constant experimentation. In nature, nature throws out experiments all the time. It throws out, that's the process of evolution. Evolution is nature's way of exploring. Experimentation, sorry, is nature's way of exploring. She throws out experiments, and anything that works is successful, and anything that doesn't, it kills. Nature is totally indifferent to the outcome. If the Amazon rainforest becomes a desert, nature doesn't care. A desert to nature is as natural as a rainforest. Constant experiments and constant experimentation is nature's way of dealing with change.
And I also want to add with that, for humans, but also for animals, this means having guts. I mean, just think about Paul and Marie Curie, who invented the X-rays, who found out about the X-rays. I mean, they spent their lives finding that wonderful technology for us, but at the same time they died because of that. Yeah. And think about all the ancestors who tried out different foodstuffs and who are not amongst us anymore because it killed them. But at least it told the rest of us, don't eat that berry.
Absolutely.
Yeah? And it also told us, oh, that berry is actually very tasty when you put some vanilla ice cream on it.
Yeah, it's good for you. And you don't get scurvy if you eat that yellow thing on the tree, huh? That
exactly.
Lemon. Right? Great. Okay, so evolution then has got a totally different kind of strategy to revolution. Revolution's man-made. Evolution is emerging. Time is actually the architect of evolution, and we'll talk about that in a bit. So evolution then works basically by whatever works. If it works, then it goes on. It can go on successfully to reproduce. So here we can see on the slide emerging outcomes and rapid recognition. If you're managing an evolutionary system, you recognize if something good is happening or if something bad is happening. You know, if you're in Alaska and the wolves start coming close to the caribou, then you go for the wolves because you eat the caribou, you need them. Okay, so it's rapid recognition of changes. That's the key to the management, although management is the wrong word. So for revolution, we've got leading, you know, follow me, charge. You've got management, manus, the hands, for revolution. Evolution, you've got facilitation, and you've got animation. Animation is when you breathe life. To animate, animus, when you, to animate a system, you breathe life into it. Like God is reported to have breathed life into the clay figure of Eve, Adam. Okay, so revolution, evolution, how do they fit in with our change model, enhance, perturb, attract, excite? Well, there you can see. Revolution on the left is basically your top-down system. The man-made system in blue. Manage and seek goals, and on the right, evolution, you undermanage, and it's about avoiding limits. So there we can see them in context of the transformational process. There is a point when the change starts, or can start by revolution. It can start with a vision, but pretty soon the leaders have to change style completely to allow the system to go through its evolutionary part of transformation. And that's the problem with a lot of untrained executives. They can't keep their hands off it. They don't trust people enough to let them make mistakes. People have to make mistakes because nature does all the time. Most experiments fail in nature. So it's a fundamental paradigm of management we're talking about here. But let's now go and talk more in detail about the difference between revolution and evolution. So revolution, where did it come from? It's based on Newton. It's based on 1687, Newtonian Principia Mathematica, Leibniz, Descartes, the scientists of 300-400 years ago. That science works if you're looking at really big systems like steam engines or clocks, but it doesn't work if you're trying to make lasers. For that, you have to use quantum physics, you have to use quantum mechanics, and then you're into some very wacky logic. So the old Newtonian model, but the problem is the levers of change that you find in all the textbooks, all these mechanical models, these are taught to managers because a lot of managers are engineers, and managers understand levers of change. They understand this Newtonian, old-fashioned mechanical way of looking, but it carries a lot of baggage. And some of the baggage that it carries is basically cause and effect. Okay, it's caused by whose fault is it? Who's to blame for this? It doesn't admit of the complexity of the system. It's logical. 1 + 1 = 2. That's linear Cartesian logic. Okay. Synergy is defined as 1 + 1 = 3 million, or 5 million, or 10 million. In other words, the outcome is greater than the sum of the individual parts. That's synergy. That's what synergy is. And that's when two or more systems get together and complement each other. They can produce a lot more than was originally thought. In physics, they have the butterfly effect. The butterfly flaps its wings in Mongolia, and 3 months later, that sets up turbulation in the atmosphere, in the environment. 3 months later, there's a hurricane in Texas. Try and find that original butterfly, the one who caused it, the one who's responsible for it. And you can see, when you look at the world from a non-linear perspective, a 21st century scientific perspective, then cause and effect goes out of the window because of the nature of complexity. So cause and effect, linear logic, is in the revolutionary camp. The leader's vision, the vision of the leader, using one mind instead of 10,000 minds, is stupid in the information age. If you can use all the members of Google, all the people in Google working on developing and changing the organization, rather than having some smart CEO, one single genius doesn't stand a chance against 10,000 very clever people. Okay.
There's an interesting example. There was a time before the internet, and there was even a time that Bill Gates from Microsoft did not believe in the internet. He thought, and he admitted, that it was just another fad that would go away. And luckily, Microsoft has a culture where Microsoft people can come up to Bill Gates and say, wait a minute, we believe that the internet will actually be the new way of doing business. We need to do this. We need to be there. And surprise, surprise, nowadays Microsoft is fully on the internet and even trying to dominate it.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting the way it happened. Huh? Mm-hmm. So, the revolutionary system also assumes control. Control comes from contra rotulus, against the written scrolls, against the written plan. So revolution assumes that you can predict the future and it can be written. And it can be, people follow the book. Okay, that's what it means. I am not paid to think. That's what it means lower down in the organization. Contra rotulus, against the written scrolls. That's what the word control means. Revolution also follows a plan. It's got set goals, but the plan can act as a constraint and does act as a constraint to many people. I'm not paid to think. I'm not paid to be creative. it creates dependence among normal people, which is one of the bad side effects of bureaucracy and hierarchy. It makes people dependent upon leaders and bosses and so on. Politically dreadful, dynamite actually. And then a goal. So it's about goal orientation. What is a goal? A goal is a dream with a deadline. Simple. Okay? The dream is the vision, and we're not against goals, but we want you to see goals in the true perspective. It's only half of the aeroplane. It's one wing of the aeroplane. We want to look also at the other wing, which is the evolutionary side. And this is the creative side of the change or the transformation. And beautiful quote from Antoine de Saint-Exupéry: you cannot order the flowers to grow. You can't order people to love you. You can't order people to trust you. You can't order people to be creative. Think, man, think. Doesn't work. Okay? It's that's not, you don't manage creativity in that way. Okay? Creativity, innovation, solutions, providing solutions, totally different type of organization. So evolution, the dynamics, time is the architect of evolution. Time shapes the outcome of evolution. Evolution is a process, as we've said, of extinction and reproduction. Imagine your system is already pregnant with potential. It's got everything you need, and your job is to actually chip away all the things that are not part of that solution, that are not part of your job is not to stimulate or motivate the system, it's to liberate the system. Like the nurse's job is not to create the baby, it's to create a situation that enables the baby to be born. It's a liberation process of liberating creativity and innovation. It's a different way of thinking altogether. Of course, you've got to believe that people are naturally clever, and I believe most people are. Okay, so you assume then the system is pregnant with opportunity. As we've said, evolution releases diversity and mutations. That's nature's way of exploring. Mutations are nature's way of finding a better way of doing things. We are all mutated Negroes, according to some theories of genetics. We started our journey perhaps 100 to 200,000 years ago. The out of Africa theory, Negroes migrated north into Europe and then into northern Europe and across the face of the earth. And as they did so, they mutated white. They got whiter to deal with the colder climates, because white is more effective in a cold climate than black. Okay, so in the last section we started talking about evolution, going into it in more detail, evolution, revolution. What else can we say about evolution? Well, evolution, as we say, is constant experimentation. I took that photograph in Devon, and it's a very good example of two trees that seem to recognize each other, being there and avoiding each other. And you can see the gaps between the trees. If you look very closely, that's all the failed experiments. So they throw the branches out, and they do every year, but they don't find the sun. Heliotropic is the word, and it's a plant's reaction to the sun, to sunlight. And you can see that gap shows the limit avoiding strategy of these trees. They're avoiding each other, or they seem to in time. Time is the architect of evolution. So evolution is a process then. It's the waving trees do not create the wind. It's kind of a jokey thing there, but it's about outcomes. It's not about planning. It happens. It's about recognizing when something good happens, a lucky break. We get a lucky break. Outcome of events, not a cause of them. Evolution is also very unpredictable. It's complex. It's chaotic. We mentioned the butterfly effect in an earlier section. A butterfly flaps its wings, and there's a hurricane in Texas, or a tornado in Texas 3 months later. It's non-linear evolution. 1 + 1 = 5 is synergistic. So a small beginning can have a tremendous kind of outcome, with natural systems. You know, if you're driving your car and you happen to kind of pull out and not notice that there's a guy trying to overtake you, so a small turn of the wheel can kind of crash 50 cars on the autostrada. So that's the way nonlinear systems behave. Synchronicity. Look up these words for yourself if you're interested. Look up spooky, the word spooky in quantum mechanics, and you're going to find a really weird thing. You change one thing at this end of the universe, and a particle or a molecule on the other end of the universe changes as if it knew. And there's no physical connection between them. That's called a spooky effect in quantum physics. You're going to come up against a really weird type of logic. That's the logic of the 21st century. Also, it's self-organizing. Evolution is self-organizing. It self-selects or self-elects according to the environment. And it creates the best fit, or it enables the best fit to survive best in the environment. Okay, the best fit. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. To understand the way evolution works, here's a little question for you. Why do antelopes run away from lions? So if a lion appears, if the antelopes or the herder, the deer, see a lion, they all run like hell. Why do they do that? We often ask that question in class, and students come up with lots and lots of various reasons. But here's the evolutionary approach. Okay? If you're thinking evolution, it's very simple. The antelopes that didn't run away, in the past, millions of years ago, antelopes that didn't run away from lions were eaten and became extinct. It's very simple. The antelopes that ran away when they saw a lion, purely probably by accident, went on to be able to breed and survive another day, procreate, and that behavior also passed on to some of their children, and it still does today. So antelopes run away from lions because it's in them to do so from millions of years ago. The ones that didn't do that became extinct very quickly. That's evolution. It's very practical, very pragmatic answer. So looking at our model then, thinking about evolution is pregnant with potential, okay? And look at the way things happen in nature. You've got, if you're a farmer, will invest in his seeds. He'll decide what the weather's going to be like this year, God help him. And he will invest. He will seed, perturb. He will nurture the seeds, that's the attract phase, and the fourth phase will be the harvest. So in farming and agriculture, enhance, perturb, attract, excite also can illustrate the way farmers work. And finally, the review of this section, the review of the two strategies of change. You've got revolution on one side and you've got evolution on the other side.